it's my turn to talk. Oh man. You've come to enjoy some carols, and now he's going to talk. Well, I tell you what, this is the most lovely evening we could have at Christmas. A church full of people, children, adults, friends, visitors, relatives, anybody that we could find and invite to come to church. You're all welcome, and it's lovely to see you. But I'm afraid you've got to listen to me talk for a few minutes. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about Jesus being the light of the world. You see, at Christmas we think of the little Jesus in the manger. And I went to someone's home even recently, and they've got a fibre optic nativity. Absolutely brilliant. I won't tell you who it is, Kevin and Anita. I won't even mention whose home has got a fibre optic nativity. And you know, I even said some covetous words of sin. I want one of those. Where'd you get it from? And Anita said, we got it from the range. But Kevin's added some bits to it. And I don't know what he's added to it, but it was fantastic. But you know, we think, and we've got a nativity set there, and some of the characters have fallen over. And I think it's an African themed nativity. Have a look at that one. And in my house, we've got a great nativity. It's a knitted nativity. And my mum knitted it for us. And, you know, I lose every so often. I lose someone important. I think over the time we've lost Mary. We've lost one of the sheep. You know, it's awkward. And when they come around for Christmas, we're trying to get the right characters in the right place. Because I'm not quite sure whether Joseph is Joseph or one of the shepherds. And it's awkward because Mum knows exactly who's where and who's what and who's in what position. So you have to get the nativity right. But I really want to share more about the Jesus that grew up. The Jesus that was the man Jesus. And why Jesus really came. Yes, he came as a baby. Yes, he came through the Virgin Mary. But he grew up. And he lived in this world. And he became a man. In fact, he became the pure, sinless, perfect man. In fact, he was described on one occasion, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. Jesus is the light of the world. John chapter 8 and verse 12, and we've already read it once. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Do you ever feel sometimes as though you're walking in the dark? Do you ever feel sometimes as you don't know which way to turn, who to turn to, what to do, what to say, and you rely on your own initiative? You rely on Google, because that's a very popular thing today, or you rely on what the ideas of others say. But I've got to tell you that if you have trust in Jesus as the light of this world, he will guide you. He will direct you, he will equip you, and he will enable you to do the things that he's called you to do. Tonight we're using candles. We're not used to using candles in Bethany, but you go into many, many churches and you see candles used. It looks really, really pretty, doesn't it? It looks really, really nice, but the candle is used to take away the darkness. It somehow erodes the darkness. And whatever the darkness tries to do to fight against the lights, darkness never wins. Does it? Darkness can never be victorious over light. You never see a whole load of darkness and all of a sudden the light disappears. It never happens, does it? The only way light disappears is if you put your hand over it. If you take the bulb out, if you extinguish it in some way. And you see, the power of Jesus is significant. The power of Jesus overcame sin. Anyone ever done anything wrong in their life? Yeah, hello, here we are. Human beings, we're all a collection tonight, aren't we? But the power of the light of Jesus overcame sin and overcame death. And you know, Satan holds these two things against us as human beings. He holds sin against you. He keeps reminding you of the things that you've done wrong. Anyone ever get that? You might be married, some of you. And occasionally, my wife never does this, but occasionally your wife will remind you of the things that you've done wrong in your life. Is that fair to say? And you might be someone who always reminds other people of the things that they've done wrong. Could you just stop doing that? Could you stop doing that, please, in your lives? Because I know when I do things wrong. I know when I mess up. I know when I stuff up. And the devil reminds me. And do you know what Jesus does with the things that I do wrong? He forgives me. He wipes the slate clean. He picks me up. He dusts me off. And he says, go on, John, go and do a bit better. And Satan uses these things against you. How many people are afraid to die? A lot of people. And do you know what? One day we will die. And the devil constantly uses that against you. It's all rubbish. There's nothing after death. It's all made up. The Christians are wrong. Well, I'll tell you what, that little voice that speaks into your head, that's Satan. And Jesus came to bring light against the darkness. The darkness never wins. Jesus always wins. And that's the first thing that we have to think about. And I've got a verse for you, and I'm going to read it for you in Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 2. Don't turn to it because you probably won't be able to see it. I've got a little bit of extra light here. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 2. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. A prophecy about Jesus. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. And you know, before I was a Christian, I walked in darkness. I did everything I wanted to do. And I did everything in the way that I wanted to do them. I walked in darkness and I stumbled to the left. I stumbled forward and I stumbled to the right. But when Jesus came into my life, changed and transformed all of that. I don't know what sort of life you have. I don't know what you do. I don't know much about you, really. I hardly know much about myself because I haven't got a lot of time to think about that. But I know that my second point is really, really important. That Jesus calls us to accept and receive his light. We need to reach out and accept it. Reach out and accept the light of Jesus. John 3:16. Give us a bit of a clue. Jesus talking to Nicodemus. And he tells him that he must believe in him. Jesus never mentions you've got to do a whole pack of good works. A lot of people try to earn the light of Jesus. It's not about earning it. It's about believing and receiving and accepting. But that particular scripture that Jesus shares goes on into verse 17. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world. And I've not come here tonight to condemn you. I've not come here to patronize or put you down. But I've come to offer you the most wonderful gift this world can ever have. You might do the lottery. If you're a church member, just remember tithing that 10%. You might do the lottery. It ain't going to help you. It's not going to help you. Do you know those hopeless dreams of the future that you might have? I dreamt I was going to be a famous footballer when I was young. I'm still dreaming. I support Aston Villa and we've had a dreadful day today. And if I wasn't a Christian, I'd be dreadfully miserable. But Jesus didn't come to condemn the world. He came to save the world. And do you know if there was someone in the water drowning, what would you do? Would you say, wow, what on earth are you doing in that lake? What a silly person you are. How did you get in there in the first place? Jesus doesn't do that, does he? He comes to save and he comes to rescue. He is the solution to our problem. I want to share this verse from 2 Samuel 22 and verse 29. And it's David talking to God. And Jesus is from the line of David, and you can look at the genealogies in Matthew chapter 1. Jesus is from David's line. And David says these words to God, "You are my lamp, O Lord. And the Lord turns my darkness into light." You are my lamp, O Lord. And you can imagine David, who praised God from morning, noon until night. You are my lamp, O Lord. And you turn my darkness, you turn my difficulty, you turn my sin, you turn my pain, you turn my anguish, you turn my depression, you turn my lostness into your lights. And we know what David was like, and he messed up and he stuffed up and he did things wrong. But God forgave him and restored him again. And finally, if you want to accept and receive his light, you've got to live it. And one of the biggest problems today in our society, do you know what it is? It's not I don't think it's our government. I don't think it's the guy that called the policeman a pleb, although he didn't say it. And we go on about this or that, or do you know what our biggest problem is? I believe it's Christians. Our biggest problem is Christians. Because if those Christians lived out the called light life of Jesus, our families, our workplaces, our schools, our communities would be changed. And I'm going to throw it out to you tonight. If you're a Christian, this year's nearly over. Let's forget 2012, shall we? Let's call it a bit of a year. Let's look forward a little bit, shall we? What are you going to do in 2013? I stood here last year. I'm getting a bit bored of standing here. Oh, John, you shouldn't be bored. Because I believe that in this room tonight is the power to change this community of Caldecots. Because Jesus Christ is here. The light of Jesus lives in you. The power of the Holy Spirit to enable and equip you to do that which ordinarily you couldn't do lives in you. And you need to enable that light to come out of you. And so many of us as God's people, we suppress it. We're fearful. We're anxious. We're worried. And God is saying to you tonight, and I believe this strongly, this year, just go for it. Go for it within your families. Go for it when you're reading my word. Really go for it. And know more about the Bible than you do about blinking EastEnders. Sorry for swearing, Karis. Just slipped out. Come on, church. Your prayer life. We're having 6 months of prayer in this church. Every Sunday morning there's going to be a sermon on it. Every Wednesday we're going to be praying together. And there's going to be other things happening. Come on. May this be a year that you go further and you go deeper. Because Jesus gave his life for you. And he gave his life so that you might live. And so that you might live a life that's far better than the life that you would have ever lived before you knew him. Jesus calls us to shine out that light. Matthew chapter 5. verse 14. We've heard about Jesus being the light of the world, but in the Beatitudes and the famous Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says in verse 14, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. And you can imagine Jesus standing on that mountain with probably thousands of people in front of him. A city on a hill that cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. They put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in that house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, so that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. My prayer for this coming year is that we're not mediocre Christians anymore. Everyone expects the church to be woolly, wishy-washy, not really doing what they say, preachers not really living out what they preach. Well, we're going to do our best. And you might have been a bit inspired tonight. You might have thought, well, come on then. Let's do it. Or you might just slip into the same patterns of last year. I've just assumed 2012 has gone. I know it's not quite gone. Jesus is the light of the world. He calls us to accept and receive his lights. And once we accept and receive his lights, he calls us to share it with the world. So that's it. That's the end of my talk. Sorry, Caris, it could have been longer. But you listened so well. The children are great. Do you know what I think as you get older, it's harder to accept the message of Jesus? There are so many obstacles that we put in the way, aren't there? There's so many problems that we create. And then we academically try to reach God. Well, the only way to reach God is that step of faith. Just step out. Just put your arm up and say, yes, I want to follow you, Jesus. And you might be a Christian, but you might be a bit, like us all. I go a bit dodgy sometimes. Do you know that? Did you know I'm not perfect? I go a bit dodgy sometimes, a bit wobbly sometimes as a Christian. But you know what I don't do? I don't run away from God. Because I know the source of power is in my relationship with God. And when I go a bit wobbly and you go a bit wobbly, I know some people, they hide from God. They run away from God. They live their life in their own way and they do their own thing. And they expect God to come and find them. Well, the Bible says if you call to him, he will answer. If you knock, the door will be opened. If you seek, you will find. So the onus is on you. He's done it all. He's done it all on the cross. He gave his life for you. He rose again. He ascended into heaven. And one day he's coming back. It wasn't last Wednesday or Thursday on the Mayhem prophecy or whatever it was. It was not the Mayhem, is it? Mayan, but it was Mayhem. And it was the most stupid thing I've ever heard. No one knows the day or the hour except the Father. Doesn't the Mayhem people read the Bible? God knows, and God's in charge. And that's where we put our trust and our faith. So thank you for listening. God bless you. We're nearly at the end. The mince pies are fresh. Well, from last year. They keep really well. Little mince pies. That's all we can afford, sorry. We're going to finish off with two of my favorite songs. They're not carols, sorry. The first one is called Jesus Messiah, and the second one is called All to Jesus. I surrender. And it always moves me. I move now announcing it, so I don't know what I'm going to be like singing it. Because it's the call on our life, is to give all of our lives to him. I don't give all of my life to God every single moment of every day, but I want to. I don't do it every day and every moment, but I want to. Because I know the more I give to him, the more he'll use me and the more he'll bless me. Okay, we're going to pray, and then we're going to sing, and then we're going to eat. And you might not be a Christian here tonight. You might be thinking a lot of that made sense. Or you might be one of those old Christians that need a bit of refreshments and a bit of renewal in your life. I'm not God. You're really pleased about that. But in this quiet moments, it's your opportunity to get right with him. Speak to him. If you don't know him, ask him to come into your life. Ask him to take away your sin. And ask him to help you to live for him for the rest of your life. And if you once knew him and have gone away and your life's gone a bit wobbly, it happens to lots of people, ask him to come and renew you and refresh you. Just get right with him. I don't know what words you're going to use. You know the words. Young people, it's the same for you. You girls there, you're 10, 11, 12. If God has spoken to you tonight, respond. Respond to what he is saying into your life. God will speak to you. As you open up your ears and your heart to him, God will speak into your life. I'm convinced that God will speak to you.